Volksgenossen und Volksgenossinnen. I mean, he had the power in his speeches to move the masses.
As he listens to BBC, he is immediately convinced that they're telling the truth.
My friend Helmut thought that was his Christian obligation to warn the people. And then he opened the door and there comes my friend Rudy. And I said, Rudy, what are you doing here? He is the third in our group. I said, what do you mean the third? Who is the second? And Helmut typed on it, Hitler the murderer, Hitler is the guilty one.
The first thing we see is that he's emerged from some kind of a process as a full-blown anti-Nazi. He puts the prefix VER on the front of the word Führer, which means that Hitler is now the seducer of the people.
I opened the door and there stood two guys with that long dark leather coat, and he lifted up his lapel from the coat and there was the badge, Geheime Staatspolizei, Gestapo. The Nazis, they don't want you to know the truth. The truth was deadly.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Truth and Conviction live stream. I think this is live stream number 3 that we're on. I'm Matt Whitaker, the creator and director of the Truth and Conviction series. And it's good to have you here. Glad everybody, thanks to everybody for tuning in. I do want to just make sure and welcome, of course, all of our Truth and Conviction fans who have been loyal and are growing. It's fun to see the numbers grow. It's fun to see more and more people kind of finding out about this project and this film and showing their interest. I also want to give a shout out to all of you Angel Studios fans who are tuning in as well. Grateful to have you here. You guys are changing the world. It's pretty cool to look at what Angel Studios has done. From my perspective, from somebody who just kind of learned about them a couple years ago, heard about this series called The Chosen, and found out about Angel Studios, and then found out that the real power behind them is thousands and thousands of people who are making good things happen and bringing about really powerful and good media. So again, thank you to all of you Angel Studios fans who are joining us tonight. I'm really excited about tonight's live stream. We've got a special guest that we're going to be talking to, and I think you're going to find it really. I don't know if you'll find it interesting. I find it interesting, and I think that you will too. But before we bring in our special guest, I wanted to take just a couple minutes and kind of talk about why we're doing this, like why we do these live streams, why we're trying to ask people to go to angel.com/truth, kind of what this whole process is. I know that a lot of you who are Angel Studios fans and who are familiar with The Chosen probably understand a lot of this already, but for those of you who are new to this or who are tuning in, I thought it would make sense to take just a couple minutes and kind of explain how this process works. And I think a good place to start is just by talking about the fact that as a filmmaker, I mean, I've been doing this, making movies for many, many years. And, about, 10 or 15 years ago, we started hearing about, crowdsource funding, and these things, these companies that were bringing in the crowds and, and asking for donations to help kind of kickstart or to build a product or a cool idea. And it was cool to see how it was working, except that for us independent filmmakers, it was always a challenge. For some reason, it was just so hard to crowdsource donations to be able to make an independent film. If you could shoot your film for $50,000, then maybe you could do it. But when you needed several $1 million, it was essentially impossible to do. And there were a lot of really talented filmmakers who were trying to do that, but it was almost impossible. And then Angel Studios got together with Dallas Jenkins and these guys at The Chosen, and they changed everything. And one of the reasons is because they weren't asking for donations for a t-shirt. They said, hey, let's let the crowd be investors. Let's let the crowd be a part of this process. And again, as many of you will know already, they broke all the records. The Chosen, the crowdsource investors came in and raised over $10 million and way more, far more than any other independent film or media project had done before that. And it opened a door. It really opened up a door for a lot of us filmmakers who had these projects, kind of these passion projects that we felt like, man, we got to find a way to do this. Again, crowdsourcing was just, crowdfunding just wasn't an option for us, or we didn't think it could work until Angel Studios cracked that nut and figured it out. And so since we've partnered with Angel Studios, it's been really cool to just kind of see how this process works. And if I can give you just kind of a little peek behind the curtain, and explain a little bit about kind of where we're at right now. So we're in what they call, and I believe this is the legal term for this, is we're in the testing the waters phase of our project. And essentially what that means is we're not asking for investors yet. We're really just trying to gauge interest and see how much interest there is in a project like Truth and Conviction. How many people want to see this kind of a story made into a series, and just gauging that. So during this testing the waters phase, instead of asking for investments at this phase, we're just inviting people to express interest. So when you hear me say, go to angel.com/truth and express interest. What that means, there we go. You can see, if you go to angel.com/truth, this is what you'll see. You can see there's that, there's a little button there where you can express interest. And if you scroll down, you can see you get more information about kind of what the story is about, other films that this story and this series will be similar to. Some information about the crew and the creatives that are involved in it, all those kinds of things. And so if you look at that and you think, man, this is something that I might be interested. This is something that I might want to express interest in investing in. Then you click on that button, and then it'll have you kind of fill out a little bit of information, and then you express interest to the amount that you think, if they were, if this does become something that they actually start asking for investors, I'd be interested in doing it to this amount, and it's really cool to see, as I was mentioning, when Angel Studios did this first with The Chosen, and I know it caught everybody off guard, that including we've all heard, or many of us have heard Dallas Jenkins talk about the fact that it surprised him, it surprised everybody, maybe except for the guys here at Angel. They may have known, hey, I think we've got this figured out. But when they raised over $10 million, it's just I know in the industry we were all just stunned and wanted to know more. But one of the things that Angel has figured out is that this testing the waters phase is an important part of the process. It really is this time to gauge the interest, and then once we feel like there's a critical mass, like, okay, there is enough interest in this, there are enough people who are saying, hey, if you guys wanted to make this, we'd be in. Once they reach that point, then then they decide, okay, yeah, let's start this in earnest and start asking for investors. So anyway, all that to say that we're in a really cool phase right now where it's really fun to see more and more people find out about this project, more and more people who are expressing interest, who are going to angel.com/truth and saying, you know what, if they were asking, I'd be in for this much, and it's really fun for us to see that. Okay. So if I can, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our guest that's going to be coming in. And as you saw on the thing, his name is Ethan Vincent. Ethan and I have been working together. He's my co-writer on this script, and we have been immersed in this project for a long time, and we will talk about that in more detail. But if I can just kind of maybe give you a little bit of background before we invite Ethan in. When I was directing the documentary, so some of you may know that, in 2001, a good friend of mine, I was actually directing another World War II documentary for PBS, and a friend of mine who was working with me on that asked me, hey, have you heard about the Helmut Huebner group? Have you heard about these teenagers that were resistance fighters in Nazi Germany? And I said, yeah, vaguely, maybe I've heard something. I really didn't know much about it. But he said, I think that one of these resistance fighters is still alive, and I think he lives in Salt Lake, and we should try and find him. It'd be interesting to see if he would even talk to us about it. So we literally just opened up a phone book and looked for his name. What we heard was his name, and found it there, and called him up and asked if he would be willing to share his story with us, if we could just come up and see him. And he said we could, and we did. And this may sound a little crass, I guess, to say it this way, but when you're wanting to interview somebody on camera to tell a story, they need to be able to tell the story well, even if they have had this incredible experience and it's the most amazing experience in the world. But if they can't share it effectively, or if they can't share it in an engaging way, then it's hard in this kind of medium, when it's an interview on camera. So we had our fingers crossed and kind of thinking, I hope that this works out well. When we went up and talked to this surviving, he was a teenager when he was doing it. Now at that point he was in his late 70s, named Karl-Heinz Schnibe. And when we went up and talked to him, and then he said he would go on camera, I'll tell you what, it was just so incredibly powerful. And we shot quite an extensive interview with him. And we finished that, and we said, okay, this has to become, we've got to make a documentary out of this. We have to tell this story, at least in a documentary form. And so this was actually back in 2001. We actually interviewed Carl on June 6th, on D-Day of 2001, was when we shot that interview with him. And after that, we began this process of making this into a documentary, like I said, for PBS. And it was, so we shot over the next year or so, and actually had the chance to take Carl back to Germany, and visit, places he lived, even some of the cells that he was held in when he was, when he was a teenager, to stand in these cells with him and actually film him being in there. It was an incredibly powerful experience. But anyway, so we shot for, over a year of footage. And then it came time where I needed to actually start editing this. I know how to direct things, but man, I am a lousy editor. And so I needed to find a good editor. And a lot of the interviews that we had done were in German. And so it was important to find a German-speaking editor, if I could. And I actually found out about this kid who was still a university student, but I'd heard he was a good editor and he spoke fluent German, and that was how I met Ethan Vincent. And it's interesting because I don't know. Have you ever like met somebody seemingly kind of randomly, or just had this chance meeting with somebody, and then it ends up becoming a friendship that lasts for many, many years? That's exactly what happened here. Where I thought maybe we would be just, editing for a few weeks or a month or so together on this little documentary, has ended up being not only a professional partnership, but a true friendship for the past 20 plus years. So in just a minute, we'll invite Ethan in. I do want to invite you, if you haven't had a chance yet, to go to angel.com/truth, check it out, and if it's something that interests you, go ahead and express interest. And it means a lot to us. So, also just one more thing before we have Ethan in. If during this, if you've got questions, I would love for you to comment below, ask questions, make comments. I'd love to know where you're watching from. That's always fun for me to see kind of where in the world people are tuning in. And also, but if you do have questions, and comment below, put those questions in there. And at the end, hopefully we'll have some time and I'll be able to answer a few questions to the best that I can. So anyway, Ethan Vincent, one more little bit of detail on this. Ethan is from Austria and lives in Austria. And so because it's the middle of the night for Ethan right now, we actually had this conversation earlier, so that he didn't have to be up at 3 a.m. Talking with us. So we will go over and bring in my good friend Ethan Vincent. And so, Esther, if you're ready to roll our conversation, roll tape, I guess they say. All right, here we are, Mr. Ethan Vincent. Welcome to the Truth and Conviction live stream, man, from your office in Vienna, Austria. Welcome.
Yes. Thank you. Nice to be on.
Good to have you here. Yeah, good to have you here, man. So I've been telling folks, you and I have been at this for a while, and longer than just about anybody else. You and I started working on the script. I know you knew I was working on a script before you started working on it. Before we started working on it together, back in 2002. But I think it was like in 2003 when we started collaborating. Just to clarify, that before we were writing together, when I was working on the Truth and Conviction documentary, you were the editor. I think you were still a student at the time, weren't you? Still a university student?
Yeah,
and I knew that. Yeah, you had come recommended because somebody said, "Hey, he's a really good editor, and he speaks fluent German." So I said, "Great, let's use him." So anyway, that was, obviously I've learned very quickly that you were an incredible editor, but also a really good writer and a talented filmmaker in your own right. But yeah, we were sitting next to each other editing the documentary when this all started. I have this distinct memory of once I had started working on the script for the movie, that I'd have my laptop open sitting next to you while you're editing the documentary, and I'm writing, trying to work on a scene. And I can remember you kind of leaning over and reading a little bit and kind of going, "Yeah, that's pretty cool. What if this?" And you started making these, just throwing in these little suggestions. And I remember thinking, actually, that's really good. What else you got? So that for me was kind of like this beginning realization of, this guy,
and it's true,
this kid.
Yeah. It's true too that the screenwriting process is such a lonely thing, and you would go on to do several other screenplays that you did completely on your own. And it really isn't fun. Not that our writing experience was always very fun, but it allowed us to riff, and that what if question just continued for I don't know how many years, and still to this day we do what if.
Yeah. And so, just to jumping forward just a little bit, I know that by 2003, you and I were joined at the hip, both of us still, having to provide for our young families, working on movies for other people, getting paid to work on other movies for other people during the day, those long production days, shooting for 12 hours, but getting up super early in the morning. And then you usually would come over to my house for the morning writing for a couple hours. And then we go to our different jobs that we were working on. And then that night I would drive to your home, which was about 15 minutes away, drive to your home, and we'd work for a few more hours. And sometimes if we were on a roll, just keep going into the night, pulling some all-nighters. I can remember a lot of all-nighters, actually, when it's just like waking up or not waking up, but, realizing the sun was coming up. Oh, look at that. You see that?
I do.
So that's in my basement. That's in the writing room, the cave, which literally had no windows, still has no windows.
Oh, I like that look. Do you see how tired and completely sleep deprived?
You could use a Red Bull.
Totally.
Yeah. So that process, and I don't know if you'll remember this, but there was one time when we were down in my writing room in my basement. And this was in 2006, so this would have been a few years later, still hammering away at it, still working at it, probably version, draft 20 of the script. But my brother was in town, and he kind of peeked into the room with his camera and shot some video of us when we were writing together. Do you happen to remember that?
I do remember that. And I remember we were in the thick of a writing session too, so it was a pleasant surprise, but a minor annoyance too. But it then turned out to be gold, to see, to think of what that means that it was being recorded, But obviously we're in the throes of doing that. We're like, oh, hi, okay, hey, let's get this thing written, and we were very focused. It
was kind of like one of those family photo experiences where at the time you're like, really, come on, do we have to do this? But then afterwards, of course, you're really grateful. I'm telling you, Ethan, I just found that footage, and so we're just going to take a minute and watch just a couple minutes of some of that footage of us creating this script together. So let's, Esther, do you want to go ahead and cue that up, and we'll watch it for a minute or two.
Hey guys.
Hey, what's up? Hey.
Another hard day at Hurricane.
Long day. Going on 17, 18 hours.
Wow, what time did you guys start this morning?
I got up at 5:30.
He got here at his home at 5:30.
How long was the commute, Matt?
Yeah, about 10 seconds.
And how many days has it been since you've washed your hair?
Oh yeah, I'm going on several. That's what I'm saying. This is where Carl says, what do you want to do? Shoot someone? Yeah. And then, enough of pause. Can you keep a secret?
That's good.
Is there that quick look between call and redo where it's like, yeah, of course we can. It's that you go, just like 3 pops and you see him from the different, you get through all the stuff.
And then you get the pictures, and then Vitamin says, "Are you done? You done with the pictures?"
Yeah, and then they take
Good.
them straight.
Now we can start working with them.
Exactly. Exactly. Not too bad.
That's interesting.
No.
But we lose. Amazing, dude. You look a lot younger.
Amazing.
That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
I think I look about the same. I think I look about the same.
Yeah, you had gray hair in your 20s and 30s, it seemed like.
Oh my goodness. It was really cool for me to see the way that, because we've been writing together, 3, almost 4 years working on this script together. But you just see, I don't know, it's so cool for me to see. I don't know if anybody else is going to care about this, but we do. Yeah. and that's all that matters. I'm telling you, just to see the way that we would kind of bounce ideas off of each other. And, I know, what if he said it this way? or what if he said it this way and then the other person responded this? What's really cool for me is to see that, and to see that some of those little details that we were working on there, which were really just minute little details, they're still in the script. We're going to shoot that scene finally, as Helmut is recruiting his friends, Carl and Rudy, to join him. And some of those words that we were trying to wordsmith or come up with the right way to say it.
And it would require us sometimes to stand up and pace around and to kind of get out of the static writing mode. So it'd be either me or you, or we'd kind of switch off. And one of us would take turns like sounding out the dialogue, playing out the line and coming up with the line. And I think there was something about being in that kind of kinetic movement space of understanding that there's actors who are emoting and they're not just, drones at a typewriter saying things. And that always helped to get up. And I remember doing that a lot with you. I remember also having like incredible laugh attacks and manic moments of funny things we came up with, knowing that they'd probably never make it into the script. But it was really cool. And I mean, there's a reason why in behind the scenes you never see the screenwriters. They never start behind the scenes of Peter Jackson writing Lord of the Rings or anything, and that's simply because it's a little bit of a boring process. But at least with us, that collaborative kind of energy was always there, and I think that's what made the script unique in how we got to act it out to each other, play it out, and really bounce it and kind of foolproof it.
Yeah. I love that moment where I think you said, my brother asks how long you guys been at it, and that day was 17 or 18 hours that we were in. That was just one normal day. If we didn't have other projects we were working on during the day, we'd marathon it, and super cool. So I'll tell you, it reminded me of an experience. Like I was saying, how many nights I would drive over to your place, and our amazing wives who would just know that there's going to be some dude hanging out at the house till all hours of the night. And I can remember several years in, one night after a long day of work, driving to your house, and it was just, I felt like I was at the end of my rope. I really felt like, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? And I felt like I was about ready to give up. I was going to drive to your house and say, dude, I think we're done. And I can remember I stopped at this stoplight, and I happened to look to my left, and there was this billboard, and on the billboard was this big photo of Winston Churchill, and he's holding his fingers up, V for victory. And the billboard was quoting him. It said, "Never, never, never give up." And it was almost like God was saying to me, it wasn't almost like, I just felt like God was saying, come on, man, don't give up yet. Keep going. This is going to be worth it. Don't give up. And I'll never forget that. I probably showed up at your door a few minutes later and started crying and sharing it with you. I don't remember, but
I had to give you a long hug. Like, it's going to be okay, Matt. It's going to be okay. No, but it kind of motivated us too, right? Like, I knew if I didn't show up at your house at 5, maybe you would smile a little bit and get back to bed and not even call me. But
this is 5 a.m. by the way, 5 a.m. Yeah,
exactly, at 5 a.m. But for the most part, it was one of those things where it's like, yep, hey, how's it going? Yep, let's go down, let's do it. And I remember the first half an hour was always kind of like okay, let's do this, And then before you knew it, we'd be like, oh crap, it's almost 9. We need to really wrap this up, and okay, let's give ourselves assignments, as if we were going to be able to do the assignments during the day. We just pick it up at night anyway. But yeah, it was an incredible strain. So that story is really powerful. That,
dividing up the scenes. Okay, you take this scene, and this scene, and I'll take this scene, and then working on them and then bringing them together. And that whole process. I guess the whole point as we reminisce, and again, I don't know how much anybody else cares about this, but for years and years and years, we have just been passionate, no paychecks for this, just wanting to get this story told, feeling it deep in our bones, feeling, a friendship with Carl that you and I both had, spending a lot of time with him, promising him, we're going to tell your story. And to interrupt us for just a second because, man, we've had some people that have been expressing interest to get this TV series, this series made. And so I just want to recognize a few people if I can. Man, this is so cool. Margaret from Idaho has expressed interest, $150. Lori from California, $25. Roosevelt from Illinois, $2,000. Man, thank you, Roosevelt. Zyrek from Indiana, $150. Just incredible. We got Thaddeus from Illinois who came in for $1,000. Claudia from California, $500. All of these people expressing interest, and all of this makes, whether it's a $25 interest expression or $2,000, all of it just makes a huge difference. So thank you to everybody who is doing that. And I would just, if you haven't had a chance yet, go to angel.com/truth if you're interested, and just let us know. It means a lot. It means a lot to us. Okay, Ethan, I want to talk about something that some people I know are maybe looking at you and going, man, he looks vaguely familiar. I'm trying to, where do I know that guy from? Well, there are obviously a few places, but if anybody who's tuned into any other of our other live streams, or if they've already gone to angel.com/truth and they've watched our pitch video, the first minute and a half of that is some concept footage that we shot about 15 years ago of Helmut's Jewish friend Saloman Schwartz, the night that he was arrested by the Gestapo and taken away. And I can remember as we were saying, we need to shoot this scene just to give people an idea of how powerful this is. And I knew that you were not only a fantastic writer and filmmaker in your own right, but I also knew that you were a really good actor. You had been in another World War II film that I wrote called Saints and Soldiers, and you were just fantastic in that. And so, yes, I asked you, would you portray the role of Saloman just for this concept footage? And you said yes, and we shot that. And so I want everybody to take a minute and watch Ethan Vincent portraying Saloman Schwartz. It'll be the first couple minutes of this pitch video, and then let's go ahead and watch the whole thing. It's just a chance to hear more about this project and hopefully learn a little bit more about it. Hear from Carl from that fantastic interview that he gave us. So let's just sit back for a minute and watch Saloman Schwartz portrayed by Ethan, and then watch the rest of that pitch video.
Ticket to flee. Zurück in die Wohnung. Hallo? Hey, Saloman Schwartz, über hier. Saloman wohnt hier. Wir beraten schon seit Wochen. Ein Mann geht jetzt Tag ein, Tag aus und 600 jeden Morgen. Das ist der Küsse, die Freundin, die Schwester. Das sind doch auch Jüdin. Sie sind Jüdin. Nein! Wir haben noch einen Jüdin. Ich habe es seit Wochen beobachtet. Wir wissen genau. Weiter! Hinten in die Tür rein. Los, wir gehen jetzt rein. So, wollen wir durchkommen? Scheißtür ein! Los! Saloman, komm raus, mach die Tür auf! Saloman, mach die Tür auf! Mach die verdammte Tür auf!
You've just seen the proof of concept trailer for Truth and Conviction, which will be the first dramatic series about teenage resistance fighters in Nazi Germany. It tells the true story of Helmut Huebner, who at 16 years old was willing to sacrifice his life to stand up for truth and freedom. There will be more powerful scenes to follow, but I just wanted to take a moment and invite you to join us. If you think this story should be a series, show your support. Click or visit angel.com/truth and let us know.
Matt, take 2, cam AC. Mark.
How did you first discover the story of Helmut Huebner?
I heard about an old man who was the last surviving member of a teenage Nazi resistance group named Karl-Heinz Schnibe. Heard that he lived less than an hour away from me. I just called him up on the phone, asked if he would be willing to share his story with me. He said, yeah, sure, come on up. So I went up to his house, sat down with him, and let him just share what his experience was as a 17-year-old with his best friend Helmut Huebner and another friend Rudy, 15, 16, 17 years old, standing up against Hitler. And they weren't using guns or fists to do it. They were using a typewriter.
I was scared. I was actually scared because we read in the newspaper every day how severely these people get punished. The Nazis, they don't want you to know the truth, you know. The truth was deadly in Germany. But I was nosy enough to want to know more.
The story that Carl told me that day has changed the rest of my life. I walked out of his house that day just knowing we have to make this into a movie. We have to tell this story.
We've had the opportunity to become really close friends with Carl over the years. He would share these experiences that he had. He would often get this distant look in his eyes. You could tell he was back in those moments. But to hear this, 80-year-old man saying, this is what we did, that brings a reality to it, that it's just not just a story, but people lived this. What came out of that was, this, not only we have to tell this story, but feel entrusted to tell the story from Carl. The screenplay is incredibly powerful. Matt Whitaker and his writing partner Ethan Vincent have really captured this engaging character piece set within Nazi Germany. And it's gained the attention of Hollywood producers, including Jerry Mullen, who was the Academy Award winner for Schindler's List. He understands the power and the importance of telling stories from that era.
It's really amazing to me to think this kid was 16. He wasn't 25, wasn't 42, he was 16 years old. And had enough to realize that he wasn't going to give in to something that he saw was wrong.
One of the most important parts of the story for me was Helmut's friendship with Saloman Schwartz, who was Jewish. One day, Saloman disappeared and the Gestapo arrested him, and Helmut never saw his friend again.
We went to church, to our church house, and there was a sign on the door which read, Juden ist der Zutritt verboten. Jews not allowed to enter. And we had one Jewish member in our branch, Saloman Schwartz. And they didn't let that young man in. He stood outside the door, and when we opened up with opening him, he was crying, but they didn't let him in.
I wonder how I would feel if somebody took my best friend away. What would I do? For Helmut, it was time to sit down and start typing up the truth. It wasn't too long after Helmut started typing up these leaflets and putting them out that he realized he needed help. And so he went right to his two good friends, Karl Schnibe and Rudy Woba, and asked him to help him.
Helmut said, let's make a promise. He who gets caught first takes the blame. Don't incriminate anybody. And that sounded good to me because I thought I'm cool. I was the oldest, I said, they don't catch me. So I said, all right. So we went that night home with about 15 flyers, and Helmut typed on it, Hitler the murderer, Hitler is the guilty one. I put him in telephone booths, I put him in mailboxes. The following Sunday in church, he saw me coming and he waved at me and I waved back and he yelled to the church, they haven't arrested you yet, have they? And I said, will you shut up? I was, so that was Helmut, joking,
They were dispersing these treasonous leaflets throughout Hamburg, Germany. They'd put them in phone booths and mailboxes and sneak them into coat pockets at the opera, eluding the Gestapo for almost a year.
Eventually, they were caught. They went to trial. At a certain point, Helmut decided he had to stand up and he had to take the attention and focus all on himself to save his two friends. And so that's exactly what he did. He stood up, he did what was right, and he let the consequences follow. Helmut was executed for standing up for truth. Carl and Rudy spent years in prison and in hard labor. An experience I'll never forget was going with Carl back to Germany and visiting some of those places where he was held as a prisoner, as a 17-year-old. But also visiting the site where Helmut was executed. And being there with Carl was truly moving. There was a busload of teenagers that pulled up with their high school teacher, and they got out and they were looking, visiting this site. And he just immediately gathered all of his students around Carl and said, "Tell us your story." To watch Carl tell them what he had done when he was their age was so powerful. They were getting it. That for me was when a seed was really planted. I began to realize that this isn't just a powerful story. This is a story that changes people who hear it. Just another quick invite. If you want to see this story made into a series, click or visit angel.com/truth to show your support. Don't worry, you're not buying or committing to anything. We just need to gauge how many of you want to be a part of bringing this story to the world.
And action!
We are partnering with Baltic Films in Vilnius, Lithuania to shoot Truth and Conviction. We produced 2 films with them previously, and we're excited to go back and work with a really great production partner. They previously produced HBO's Chernobyl series, as well as HBO's John Adams miniseries and the BBC's War and Peace. Another partnership we're very excited about is with Angel Studios. They've had such incredible success with the Chosen series, and we're excited to bring this project to the global audience that they've been able to reach.
Our mission is to tell stories that amplify light. And when we saw the story of Truth and Conviction and what the creators behind that story, we realized that they were going to be able to tell a story that has those same principles that The Chosen and any other project that amplifies light. And it's a story that needs to be told today. It's a story that matters now.
Helmut had big blue eyes. I mean, really big, dark blue eyes. And I never saw Helmut emotionally, He never showed his emotion when something happened. And when I put my arms around him, I told Helmut, I see you pretty soon. His eyes filled with tears. And he said to me, I hope you have a better life and a better Germany. And then he cried.
We talk about stories like Helmut's story of someone sacrificing their life for someone else. I've always felt that there's like this, across humanity, it's like there's this deep connection with those kinds of stories. For me, that's what Helmut did. At some point, he must have known he was going to be sacrificing his life to do that, right. But he did it anyway. That compels me to tell this story.
I personally am asking you to get this made, get it out there, and let the world understand what this young German kid did in 1942. Talk to your friends and tell them, even though he died in 1942, his example of courage, of character, of commitment, we're talking about today. I love what he's about. I want to be just like him.
Thanks for watching. Help us share this powerful story to honor Helmut, Carl, and Rudy, and hopefully inspire a new generation. To express your interest in this series, click now or go to angel.com/truth to show your support.
It's interesting. We have been immersed in this story for so long, but every time I hear Carl talk about Helmut's last words to him, it gets me. Yeah. It gets me every time. And also, that scene with you portraying Saloman, seen it hundreds of times, and every time it gets me. Besides just thinking about, trying to imagine what that experience would have been like, how frightening, how extremely terrifying that would have been. your performance is really good. I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have any recollection of all of kind of what it was like for you to kind of get where you got in shooting that scene?
I remember when you asked me feeling a little uneasy about that, just on a couple different levels, but I think understanding the nature of the pitch video and what it is we were trying to accomplish. I think both you and I agreed very, very quickly that when it came to the real casting of Saloman Schwartz, that we would obviously look elsewhere and also look for very authentic characters who would be able to portray that role from a cultural standpoint as well as a religious standpoint and those things. And so those things we discussed early on. I think that was important to us. And yet we knew, the constraints of production and the budget and what we needed to get done. And for me, it was the scenes we had written to understand what that moment is when Saloman is right before capture. I mean, this was a key moment in the script and also a key moment, I think, in Helmut's development. And you and I had to figure out very quickly a lot of what ifs that we did. What if, Helmut was a little bit closer to this instance? And what if the impact of that was a real catalyst for him to pursue a different, more engaged, even a more kind of forceful flyer approach in how he dispersed them and how he wrote them. And we feel that those were all really big factors, like you talked about even in the video, about what it would be like to lose a close friend.
And if I can just add too, because you were raised in Germany and Austria, you have a different perspective. That was one of the things that I think has made our writing partnership so effective and so meaningful to this script in particular, is the perspective that you grew up with. And maybe you can just talk just briefly about that. I mean, what was learning about World War II like for you in high school, and what you guys, what was that experience like, and what's that experience like for you and your children? Do you mind just kind of sharing a little bit about that?
Yeah. Totally. I mean, it's really still prevalent in the sense that school curriculum in history does do a deep dive into World War II, but it doesn't shy away from doing all of World War II. And one of the prerequisites in a lot of schools, kind of the gymnasium, the higher education schools, they go on field trips to Mauthausen in Austria, for example, which was an active concentration camp. And so you are walking, those memorials and kind of left to really be confronted with that on a very deep emotional level. And one of the things that I see now as a father is my children in Austria are also required to go to these camps and to see them firsthand. And I remember my youngest daughter, Lovis, asking me to do that. And it was real interesting how it was kind of dated, and I apologize for kind of going way back here, but we took a trip to New York in 2018. It was me and my two daughters, and we, of course, I think it was around October 26th that we went to the 9/11 memorial. And it's so fascinating to me that my children hadn't been born yet on that time, but they were really, impressed by by how that, exhibition was done and that museum. And, we got to speak to eyewitnesses that were there and that related the experiences, and you got to see pictures. And then, of course, the fountain outside with these engraved names, written rather largely. And you would just see the impact of that. And, we have around 3,000 names there that you're looking at spread over these fountains, and it was impressive. And I was really kind of touched at how my daughters took to that and how they understood, like, the ground they were on and what it means, and what that was like for us. Like, it was interesting that I could be an eyewitness to that event. But what was even more impactful for me too was that 3 weeks later, my daughter and I went to the Mauthausen concentration camp outside of Vienna. I mean, it's quite a drive, but we went there, and she did this because she had a report, and she chose as a topic of all topics kind of the history of and the development of the concentration camps. And this was one particular camp in Austria where it had been kind of switched into an extermination camp. And there's a moment, and I still get chills thinking about it, but there's a moment where you go down into the so-called room of names, and they've, listed there over 84,000 names that are written in very small font and kind of packed in, and it just stretches across this room. And it is, I can't do the math in my head, but I can't tell you how many 9/11 memorials are packed in that room. And I remember us walking through, and she understood the true significance of names and individuals. And right on the other side of this incredible display was a book that contained all the names that you could leaf through, and you could actually see them not stacked side by side, but written on their own. And I remember that was kind of the most impactful moment we had there too, is like really recognizing the individuals and understanding their tragedy of that. And the idea of not forgetting and remembering is still kept alive here, and I'm quite proud of that is a true factor here in understanding, that part of history. And I think we understood very early on that although we are not going into that particular history, and also kind of early, and very remarkably early for a resistant fighter, but also for where Saloman was positioned and where he found himself in Hamburg, that we don't really have that instance. We don't have the Holocaust really featured to the extent that a lot of World War II's films do, and playing in Germany. But to a degree, it is such a key piece in how Helmut moves forward in his flyers and how he understands the tragedy that's about to happen. It's right around the corner, for Helmut.
Well, yeah, and in fact, we know that after Saloman was arrested, eventually he did die in a concentration camp.
Yeah.
Helmut didn't live long enough probably to know whatever happened to Saloman, but Carl and Rudy did. When I look back and I see the impact that their friendship with Saloman had on them, and specifically on Helmut, that I've wondered, Saloman said some things to Helmut, planted some seeds that Helmut tried to nurture and spread, and hopefully, in our own little way, maybe the script that you and I have worked so hard on will hopefully continue that. And as you were alluding to never forget. This is a way that hopefully we can help to never forget, help us to remember what was done. I'm just going to touch on one more thing. Ethan, again, thank you for sharing that perspective that you have, and that now is passed down to your children, who weren't even born when you and I were, or just babies when you and I were, pulling all those all-nighters writing together. And now they're teenagers that are learning that perspective that you grew up with and that you brought to the writing of these scripts. And now here we are, 20 or so years later, and on the cusp of actually finally being able to shoot these scripts and make this film. And I know that, as I'll be directing them, that you'll be on set writing and rewriting every single day, because that's the way, different from how a play is. Once a playwright turns in the play, man, nobody changes a word. You can't do that. Or, once an author finishes a book. But with a screenplay, it's a work in progress always, and so you'll be on set while we're shooting in Lithuania, rewriting every day, and giving us new script pages in the morning that we can dive into, and just really excited to finally hit that part of the process together, something that we started so long ago. So Ethan, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for staying up really late and talking through some of these things with us. I look forward to, I'm sure we'll have you on again, so don't go anywhere, but look forward to moving forward and finally putting these things on film. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right, we'll see you, man.
See ya.
All right, we are live again tonight. Thanks again to Ethan for joining us. That was so much fun for me, and I hope that he is right now sleeping soundly in his home in Vienna. But again, I don't know how much all of that is interesting to other people, but for the two of us who have been as immersed and focused on finding some way to tell this story for as long as we have been, it's kind of therapeutic, I guess, to just every once in a while just kind of reminisce and talk through and maybe hopefully that some of that process might be interesting to other people. We have hot off the presses here some folks who have expressed interest, and I just want to shout out to some of them. Well, we've got Anonymous who expressed interest in investing at $500, another Anonymous, $100, another $150. I don't know your names, but I love you already. Thank you. Sandra, who expressed interest at $50, and Susan at $500. Thank you, Susan. Oh, wow. Jorge, who expressed interest at $1,000, and Amy K at $5,000. Amy, thank you. And so many others. This is just fantastic. I'm grateful if what you're watching tonight gets to you, if it touches your heart, if it's something you think, man, I would really like to see this made into a series, go to angel.com/truth and let us know. We would really appreciate it. I believe we've got a little bit of time for maybe one or two questions. And so if we've got question number one, yes, and I'll do my best. We'll see. I don't see these in advance, so we'll see if I know answers to these questions. Question says, Andrea Newell asks, where can one find those other live streams and pitch video? That's a great question, and I probably don't have the best answer, but I know that if you go to YouTube and just type in Truth and Conviction, you can find the YouTube channel, and you can see them there. And in fact, other previous live streams that we've done, this is our third, I think, but previous live streams that we've done will be there as well, and you can watch those. And of course, I think the easiest way to see the pitch video is to go to angel.com/truth. It's front and center when you go there, and so you'll be able to watch it there. Andrea, thank you for that question. And we've got a question from Zyrek Castellino. He says, Zyrek asks, I think it's he, I hope that's right. Zyrek asks, at what point will the actual investments be taken? Great question, Zyrek. I mentioned a little bit earlier that at this stage, we're at what's called the testing the waters stage. So we really are right now just gauging interest. And the answer to that question just totally depends on all of you. If there are enough of you who want to see this get made and who express interest, that will determine if and when we can start actually asking for investments and starting that process. So again, Zyrek, thank you. Oh, got one more question here, maybe one more. How many episodes in the series? Another great question. And I should maybe just a little bit of background. When Ethan and I first started writing that, it was going to be just kind of a theatrical release film, so a 2-hour movie. And it's just been recently when we have converted it into what they used to call mini-series. Now they call it a limited series. But we know that for season 1, it'll be 4 episodes. So a 4-episode limited series to tell Helmut Huebner's story. So, Vicki, thank you very much for that question. I think that's all they're going to let me do as far as answering questions. Again, want to thank everyone, for all of you who were able to tune in, and a special thanks to Ethan for joining us from Europe. And I guess I'll just give a little plug for next week. So next Wednesday, the week of 4th of July, so on the 6th, we're going to do it'll be probably a shorter live stream, but it's going to be really cool. A while back, I did some interviews with a bunch of actual veterans of World War II, not only on the American side, but also on the German side, and even one Japanese veteran of World War II. And we're just going to talk about, take a few minutes to honor those who fought for their countries and to hear their perspectives. And so, if you'll get more about this, but next Wednesday on July 6th, it should be a really good live stream as well. And again, just one last invitation to go to angel.com/truth and check it out, learn a little bit more about the project, express interest if this is something that you think is worth being made, and then we'll get this thing made. So it's up to you. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next week.